We have seen men and women with excellent potentials made into shadows of themselves by abusive spouses, some losing their lives in the process. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Pure Words with OD, a platform where we discuss Bible principles and morals. There have been many misconceptions about the scriptural teaching on divorce. Some say that God hates divorce, therefore divorce is a sin. Others say that divorce is permitted even among believers. Some assume that divorce is permitted only on the ground of sexual immorality or adultery. Great and lasting things are at stake, not only because of what we teach, but also because of who we are, the examples that we are leaving behind. In today's video, we will be looking into what God says concerning divorce. To divorce simply means to legally end one's marriage with someone. It means when people are married and either or both of them decides they no longer wish to be together. The Bible tells us in the book of Malachi, chapter 2, verse 16, that God hates divorce. God never intended for anyone to get divorced. His original plan for every marriage is for the man and the woman to be joined together in holy matrimony where they become inseparable until death. Marriage has lots of advantages, some of which is to help, support, comfort, and to balance one another. But it can also destroy us if we don't know how to abide by its rules. In order to enjoy the benefits of being married, God has laid down rules and standards for married people to abide by. These rules and standards constitute a covenant, and it is the covenant of love and respect. Misunderstanding in marriages are bound to be and are necessary for marital growth. However, marital conflict is not just about misunderstanding. Rather, it could be a series of events that have been poorly handled so as to deeply damage the marriage relationship. When marriage issues have decayed to the point where stubbornness, pride, anger, hurt, and bitterness prevents effective marriage communication, all these, unfortunately, can lead to divorce. But when it comes to marital abuse, that may not always be the case. A victim of an abusive marriage may wonder, why is my spouse so mean to me? Why are they so cold and heartless? How come they show no remorse or empathy even when their actions hurt me? How come they are so manipulating and enjoy seeing me go through pain and sufferings, always disregarding or violating my rights? How come they lack humility and have the tendency to lie often? How come they have recurring problems and believes firmly that they are always right? Studies have shown that spouses who abuse their partners are oftentimes psychopaths. Psychopathy is a mental illness or mental disorder. There are many different types of mental illnesses or mental disorder, some of which are mild while others can be severe. A mild mental disorder may also be referred to as mental health condition. It is usually associated with distress. This could be anxiety, depression, or sometimes bipolar, which can affect one's emotional regulation or behavior. For a mild mental disorder, effective prevention and treatment options does exist. According to International Classification of Diseases, ICD, in 2019, 1 in every 8 people around the world were living with a form of mental disorder. If a spouse has a challenge, be it mental or physical, it is expected that their partner sticks with them in overcoming any such challenge. However, psychopathy is a severe mental state. According to medical experts, it is a deformity in the wiring of the brain. And if such is the case, you cannot change such person, but to protect yourself from them. Psychopathy falls under the umbrella of what Moses the prophet referred to as uncleanness. When the Bible says something is unclean, it often means it has some form of deformity, illness, sinfulness, contamination, or that it has been spiritually corrupted. At some point in our lives, we may have experienced, seen, or heard of domestic violence and marital abuses among intimate partners. These abuses could be words or acts. We have seen the damages they cause. These damages could be emotional or physical, which may sometimes lead to violent acts of murder, bodily injuries, mental or physical scars. We have seen men and women with excellent potentials made into shadows of themselves by abusive spouses, some losing their lives in the process. There is a story of a popular African musician whose husband abused her both mentally and physically over a long period of time. According to testimony, in the process of torturing his wife, the man will give whip to his children and will ask them to whip their mother while he records her on tape. But the woman chose to continue living with him, hoping that the man would change. She claimed that her religion does not permit her to divorce, so she remained in the marriage, until one day the man beat her to her death. There are lots of similar stories out there of people losing their lives ignorantly to abusive relationships and marriages. Moses used the word uncleanness. Uncleanness is an umbrella word that encompasses all forms of unruly behavior or acts that goes against marriage covenants, including but not limited to mental or physical cruelty. It says, the moment you discover that there is such uncleanness in them, to end the union. There is a story of a woman in the United States who hired a hitman to kill her husband. She thought she had succeeded. The police not only knew that Mrs. D, which was the woman's name, had hired a contract killer to murder her husband, but they had played along with it so as to have enough evidence to prosecute her. After reconnecting with an ex-boyfriend, Mrs. D shared her desire with her ex-boyfriend to kill her husband. But the ex-boyfriend took the information directly to police and worked with the police on the operation that eventually led to Mrs. D's arrest. It wasn't the first time Mrs. D had tried to kill her husband. She had previously mixed his tea with poison. Now, these were a newly wedded couple. What on earth would cause a newly wedded bride to want to kill her husband who loved her so dearly? Some of the signs of a psychopath is that they are impulsive in behavior. That is, they will act without thinking of the consequence of their action. A psychopath lacks the ability to understand and to share the feelings of another person. They have a sick sense of pleasure from the pain and suffering of other people. Cruelty and meanness are key signs of a psychopath. Researchers visited some of the most dangerous killers in modern history to see what traits they possess. Their finding is that they possess all of the traits of a psychopath. We must understand that no matter how much we hope and wish that a psychopath will change, they may never change. Because according to medical experts, it is a deformity in the wiring of the brain. But according to spiritual belief, psychopathy is a demonic possession. And that could explain why medical experts still have not been able to come up with a cure for it. They say no pill or medication can instill empathy. No amount of vaccine can prevent murder in cold blood. And no amount of talk therapy can change an uncaring mind. Although believers believe that psychopathy is a demonic possession, in order to receive help, a person with psychopathic personality has to acknowledge and be open to spiritual counseling. Moses is saying you cannot subject a person with such uncleanness to a responsibility that is beyond their mental capacity. Otherwise, it could trigger the condition in them. Note that it says, because you have found, meaning it is not something you possibly would have noticed before being intimate or married to them. While some psychopaths can be easy to identify, others can maintain a face of normalcy for many years until the mask falls off. Mrs. D's husband saw the signs of uncleanness in Mrs. D when she had tried poisoning his tea and other strange behaviors that she had displayed during the union, but failed to put her away. If not for the ex-boyfriend who turned on her, Mrs. D's husband would have been history today. The musician woman saw the signs of uncleanness in her husband, but chose to continue living with him, and as a result, she paid the price with her life. I have seen those who tolerated abuse for years, hoping that an abusive spouse would change, only to realize that the person had no intention of changing, but they themselves have become damaged and sometimes killed by an abusive spouse. I would like to re-emphasize that not every misunderstanding in marriage should be a ground for divorce. Misunderstanding in marriages are bound to be and are necessary for marital growth. If a spouse has a challenge, be it mental or physical, it is expected that their partner sticks with them in overcoming any such challenge. The essence of marriage is to help, support, and to balance one another. In a case of conflict, Christian counseling could be sought if necessary, so that both partners can review what went wrong in their marriage and work towards fixing it. However, if the challenge is of such that endangers their spouse, either physically or mentally, if it is of such that the illness causes them to display meanness and cruelty towards their partner, if it is of such a nature as to make it unbearable to continue living together with such a person, divorce, therefore, is recommended. In conclusion, wickedness of the heart is the soil in which psychopathy thrives. Psychopathy, although may be an illness, if a person with psychopathic personality is determined to crave kindness and to saturate their heart with it, psychopathy will not thrive in them. In other words, a medication for psychopathy is to crave after kindness of the heart. Finally, whether or not a spouse is a psychopath or they are just being abusive, if a person does not value you, they don't deserve to have you. Someone says, if sexual sin is not the only ground for divorce, why then did Jesus said in Matthew 5:32, everyone who divorces his wife, except on the ground of sexual immorality, causes her to commit adultery? That will be addressed in our next video titled, Is Sexual Sin the Only Ground for Divorce? Thanks again for watching Pure Words with OD. I'll see you on our next video. God bless you. Bye-bye.